Hiya folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness. I'm joined today again by Dan Ryan. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. We're here to talk about Deep Space Nine.
I said it was
long
coming.
overdue,
Yeah.
but we've gone through that final arc, and that's specifically what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
The 10-part story arc to the end of Deep Space Nine. You know, most people will watch this will already know, so there's no point us really doing plot synopsises on things like that. But we are going to talk about some of our favourite parts of the arc that happens through these last 10 episodes and character development and things like that. We're also going to talk about this idea of the timing of Deep Space Nine, because it was an end of an era for this series, but it was also an end of an era for a lot of things, because it came at this weird point in Star Trek's history where it really did start to change then after that. I mean, you had a couple more seasons of Star Trek Voyager, but then after that we had Enterprise, which most people consider to be the weakest of the pre-J.J. Abrams, Kurtzman Star Trek series. It's also a prequel series, so for the first time ever, instead of continually moving forward in time,
It jumps
it goes way back.
Yeah.
And that's something that they've largely continued, haven't they, with a lot of new Star Trek. Just keep going back and going back to the well, you know.
Most of it's back.
Yeah, I mean, Picard
is
technically goes forward, but it's still going back metaphysically,
Yeah.
and you know, in terms of how it goes back to the redress and destroy all the past, things like that. So,
But yeah, everything else is prequels and stuff.
And of course, also with Discovery, when they did finally go forward, they just destroyed everything and started again from scratch with the Screaming Kelpian. The Screaming Kelpian. Yeah. What a piss poor way to resolve something like that, especially something as massive as wiping out Starfleet, the Federation, all that pretty much. And
that's the one thing that had me mildly interested that season. I was like, oh, what actually happens?
Could have been interesting. Yeah.
I wonder what caused this to happen, but no.
And within that scream was the creation of the Wokey Wokes. Anyway, so that's another thing we're going to talk about, and it's also one of those things that when you have an end of an era, what comes afterwards? We've watched it happen in bad ways with Star Trek. We've watched it happen in bad ways with things like Doctor Who. But also interesting good things can happen. We talked a lot about Star Galactica, for example.
Yeah.
It's a reboot, but brilliant.
Yeah.
Arguably better than the original series.
I haven't actually seen the original.
No, yeah. I love the original series, but I still think the remake is better.
Yeah.
And when you could do something absolutely magical, as you're currently watching it, Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks.
That's like Marmite for a lot of people, because a lot of people think what happened with season 3 was absolute travesty, you know, of ruining a classic series. But no, I'm firmly in the camp of genius, you know, and what you can do when you come back so many years later.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean to say that something's dead if it's done right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll let you know if I agree with that.
yeah. So there's both sides of the argument on that one, but yeah. So we'll get into that idea. But let's start. What overall, first of all, were you happy with the way the series ended? I mean, I know you haven't watched the entirety of Deep Space Nine. I've
speed ran Deep Space.
But all the story arc stuff you've watched. You've watched some of the key good episodes and things like that outside the story arc, and key character development episodes and things like that. So you're pretty well versed in the series for the most part. Except that you skipped a lot of Ferengi episodes, which meant that when you saw
I didn't skip a lot of Ferengi episodes. I skipped all of the Ferengi episodes.
Actually, that's not technically true, because I've got a feeling that when you first tried to watch Deep Space Nine every episode, you watched the Nagus.
I probably
in season
did.
1. But you probably can't remember it.
that was like 4 or 5 years ago. I tried to start it many years ago, and I got bored and I stopped. And then I started watching it with a list that you gave me with the key episodes. I got to like season 3, and then I stopped.
And then
I tried it again.
You tried it again a third time, and then you finally.
And then I finally.
You found your groove. Yeah. You found your mojo with it.
Sisko shaved his head and grew a beard.
That's quite substantially what helped. I mean, as it sounds, no, it didn't help. It happened to coincide.
That is when it gets like.
Well, I argue differently with that one, but I think from an outsider's perspective, yes, it does time with when the series kicks into a different type of gear that could be appealing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I love episodes from season 1. There's not many, but I do. There are episodes. Duet
I have
It's a
seen that
fantastic,
one.
brilliant
I have seen.
episode. Yeah, season 2 is full of really, really good episodes. Really good episodes. Probably half and half for me.
Oh, is it?
You know, there's a couple of clunkers, but they're either good or brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you've got Blood Oath. You've got The Collaborator. You've got Necessary Evil. You've got there's just so many. You've got Tribunal. You know, they really, really are brilliant episodes. The Wire is another good one. Season 3's got a lot of good episodes in it. It's got a brilliant 2 parts of Past Tense, which you've seen. You know,
Yes.
which we've referenced a lot in our Picard stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so
Came to nothing in the end.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could argue there. So anyway, let's get back to it. So overall, were you happy?
Yeah.
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 I think
Ecstatically happy or just happily happy?
I think more than any other time watching the series, watching this set was the time where I wanted more the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Like, because other bit, I think it's because with the other bits, I'll watch one and then I'll skip a few, and then I'll watch a couple and then skip a few. This like I'm watching a block of all of them, so even like the little subtler character conversations and stuff that I might have missed before, I got more of the whole thing here,
the bigger picture of it,
than before, and it
and
I was happy with how pretty much everything ended as well. There's one thing that a little bit I was like, oh, that's a little bit underwhelming, but
right. Well, we can talk about it if you want.
Yeah, and that is during the last episode, when they're attacking Cardassia, Odo, how they end the war. Odo and the female changeling just link hands, and she's like, "Okay, the war is over."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, is that it?
Is that it?
Okay. Yeah. I remember reading a review at the time. I can't remember what magazine it was, and somebody had said at the time. I don't agree with the sentiments of this statement, but at the time when I wasn't as informed in the world as I am now, somebody had said, the United Nations needs somebody like it, or NATO needs somebody like you. Odo. Just go in there, just shake their hands. The war is over. You know? But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely
it's
right.
It's too quick.
It's just there.
It's how long's the war? It's like they actually
it started properly in season 5.
Yeah,
2-parter.
Yeah,
2/3 of the way through season 5.
So
you've had 2.5 years of proper full-on war.
Yeah, and it just ends with like.
Yeah,
like half a second handshake.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, that was underwhelming.
I know. But do you think? Because we've had a bit of insight today. I mean, I knew a lot of this, but I refreshed it. But we went through Star Trek Deep Space Nine Companion, which is a very, very old book now, and it's all shriveled up at the edge there. But we were getting, for the purposes of video, we were just getting some insight into the behind the scenes stuff and that, and they were still ironing out a lot of the kinks, weren't they, in that last 10 episodes? There was things they wanted to do and things that they weren't sure about, and so I wonder if, I mean, they admitted it themselves, didn't they? It got rushed at the end. Yeah,
and they didn't quite. They knew how everything was going to end, but they didn't quite know how they were getting there. It was all
dovetailed together nicely in that final thing. Yeah.
Like there was a lot of things they rewrote and some scenes they reshot. And
They even reshot the Sisko scene, didn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was more to do with Avery Brooks, because he pointed out rightly that at that point in time, you know, there was this thing of, is it a good message having a black woman, with a single black woman with a child, raising a child alone, kind of thing? Is that sending out the right messages? And Avery Brooks rightfully was an advocacy for not putting, you know, to putting positive messages rather than those kinds of messages. Yeah. So they rewrote the line, didn't they? About when he would be back, if he would be back, and that kind of thing.
It's like one day.
A lot of series that do story arcs, they concentrate far more on the telling the story and having lots of wow moments, and the characters just sort of become incidental to that. You know, the character development is driven by where the story has to go.
Yeah.
So you then have things like Arya killing the Night King, and Daenerys doing her thing at the crazy, you know, the Mad Queen at the end.
Yeah.
So that's all dictated by where the story has to go. I think Deep Space Nine is the opposite way around, because I think it was where they wanted to take the characters that dictated where the story would go.
Yeah, I think so.
They had a broad idea of where the story wanted to go to, but the characters find, you know, primarily that is where they would lead it.
That's what it seemed like from what it was saying, anyway.
So that's why you do get some good places the characters land in the end. There might be plot holes, but the characters all end in some really, really good places. Now, when we put our list together of the things that take the story along through these 10 episodes and the things we like, if you actually look, they're all character things. So you've got Sisko getting married to Cassidy, and she gets pregnant. They can have a child, and then he gets a message from the prophets from his mother Sarah saying, "Don't marry her, otherwise you'll know nothing but sorrow." Which presumably they said that was because of the child that was going to come into the equation. But he did marry her anyway, because he didn't take them so seriously in their warning. But so that's one. You've got Ezri and Worf in the first 3 episodes. He thinks he's got something of Jadzia back, so they sleep together, and then she instantly regrets it. He thinks he's got her forever, and then, and then you find out that he's in love with Dr. Bashir. She's in love with not Worf. Worf's in love with Dr. Bashir.
Worf and Dr. Bashir have very aggressive sex. That episode's an 18, and it's just everywhere, and it's
You've got these wonderful little movement with Bashir and O'Brien, which leads to one of the best episodes of that arc. I mean, it's
one of my favourite episodes in the series.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. It's a great place where they talk, and there's not enough of that, especially not in storytelling today. They do it with every other representation in society, but why can't you tell a story about 2 guys who are the best of friends, enjoy spending time with each other? There's nothing homoerotic about it. In fact, they even make a joke about it, don't they, in that episode where, God, I don't know if you want to tell viewers.
They're basically saying, like, Bashir's like, I love Ezri, but I like you more. And he's trying to get O'Brien.
Well, I love Keiko.
He's like, I love my
wife.
He's like, but you like me more.
Oh, they like me more. Yeah. And that's the thing that people never want to admit in life, who people enjoy spending time with. And we live in a society nowadays where if you say, I love spending time with that person, they go, oh yeah, what's going on here? No, I just enjoy spending time with that person. They're a good friend, they're well, it doesn't have to mean anything more than that. But we live in this crazy world now where everything's about what you're putting your bits into and where you come from or what colour you are, whatever, and all that kind of thing. And it's just, it should be just about life and how people are with each other, and the friendships and relationships that they have. That's what makes for good writing. You can still tell all representation stories, but you focus it through the friendship thing, through the relationship thing, rather than all the rest of it. I think. Yeah, well,
they're my favourite couple in the show anyway.
Good friends, mate. Yeah. Another relationship one there, which is interesting, is Odo and Kira. Doesn't really go very much into, because they're apart a lot. It shows that they're in love with each other, but I think that the thing with this is a lot of that, which you haven't watched a lot of season 7. Is it really goes into their relationship, especially in episode Chimera, where they're together in this story arc, but then when he's dying of the disease that he's been infected with by Section 31, he tells her just to go off and do the mission that she was on. They say their goodbyes, and that's it until he's cured again. They don't get back together again until the final episode. So criminally underserved, I think, in that 10-part story. Because they are one of my favourite aspects. Kira is one of my favourite characters in Star Trek. She's a really strong female character. For those people out there saying they don't write them, they didn't write them before 5 years ago. Bollocks! Yes, they did. Kira is a great example of a really, really strong female character, isn't she? I mean, I know you agree with me on that one. But I know she's not one of your favourites, but
Sisko is my favourite.
And he's not strong, but he's a good example of a very strong black character. So So there you go. Yeah, and I like Sisko as well. He's actually my favourite Star Trek captain. So I'm very much glad to admit that, because people say, "How dare you not pick Picard or Kirk?" They're closely behind, but Sisko's
Sisko is the best character I've not watched as much as you, of course.
No,
but
he's a fantastic character. He's a fantastic character. He's a and it's criminal how when they introduced him into the series, he was just a commander. It took 3 years for him to get to be captain. Why he wasn't in there as captain right from the get-go, But there you go. I'm sure there were political reasons within television for them not doing that at the time. Maybe it was one of those things that was something that shouldn't have been allowed to happen, but there you go. So what else have we got? Can you think of any other things that we've got from the story arcs? I mean, it's worth mentioning Damar as well. That's another good one.
Yeah.
Brilliant story arc that is.
It ends very fast.
Yeah, too fast.
I think...
Yeah. Because he's just somebody who's been trampled all over by the Dominion, hasn't he? And then he starts to realise that our land's our home's been taken away. We're prisoners in our own home here. So he takes up the good fight, the good cause, which I'm all for that kind of thing. You know, just cause he's fighting for it. He does. He literally builds a resistance, and sorry, go on.
And then the resistance falls, and then he dies.
Yeah, he dies at the end.
His death is like very effective.
Yeah,
he's just like they're shooting, and then you're like, oh, he's
dead. He goes keep, as if to say keep going.
Yeah,
and he just goes. And that's all he manages to do. He just goes keep.
And he gets shot, and then he dies, and you're like, "Oh my god, that was fast!"
Yeah, and I had heard that because he's one of those characters that a bit like Ducot, really, because Ducot, you know, when Ducot went good, and then he became bad again. Obviously, we'll come to that in a moment as well. Ducot and Kai Wynn and all that. If they've done some horrible things, how can you ever redeem those characters fully?
Yeah.
So some people have said, well, he got his just desserts. I mean, he killed Zial.
Yeah.
In a horrible way, you know, just bluntly shot her.
I guess, maybe, yeah. I suppose when you put it like that,
yeah. But he still, he came good in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I like that when that happens. It doesn't happen very often in TV shows, but it's good when that happens. Yeah. Ducot, let's talk about Ducot and Kai Wynn to some degree. Because
it's such a strange story.
Character you liked, wasn't he, Ducot?
It's such a strange story, because, I mean, he goes from being a security guard on Mars to
Mark Alamo. He's been in a lot. In fairness, he's been in a lot of things. He really has.
But just because we watched that the other day in
we
cinema,
we watched it, didn't we? Yeah. Great film. Yeah. A weird character. Gone lots of places. He was bad, then he was good, then he was bad, then he was good.
Yeah, and he was.
Now he's took up with the cause of the Pirates. He wants to release them all from the fire caves and
very evil,
destroy Bajor
and very insane.
Yeah, and recruited the religious leader of Bajor, Kai Wynn, to do it. Convinced her that it's the prophets, and didn't tell her. Disguised himself as a Bajoran. Jumped into bed with her as well at one point.
It's quite weird, that whole arc, because you keep jumping between. It's like you feel bad for her, then suddenly oh no. She's a twat. And then you start to feel bad for her again. And then you're like, oh no, she's evil. And it keeps happening. Throughout the whole thing.
Do you know something? I love that about Kai Wynn's character.
Yeah.
Because it's a credit to the writers and it's a credit to her acting. She's brilliant. She's a brilliant actress, Louise Fletcher.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, no more so than when you see her as Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, that got her an Oscar, you know. And one of those rare occasions where an Oscar was actually deserved, you know. It was a tour de force, you know, fantastic performance. And she's always been like that in her acting. I think she's had a few missteps here and there, you know, like, was it Exorcist 2, was it? The Heretic or whatever it was. But anyway, I won't mention that. You know, she's delivers fully. She makes you feel sorry for her sometimes, and then she makes you feel like
like,
you know, the next second
you're like, oh, you deserve what's happening, and then you're like, oh, does she though? And you're like, and then ooh.
I can't remember if you watched the episode, the Collaborator in season 2, the one where they've got that Bajoran chap who's sent home. He worked for the Cardassians and he wants to go home, and Kira says, you never set foot on this planet again because you collaborated with the. Did you ever see that one?
I can't remember. I was like over a year ago.
Right, okay. So anyway, so there's this line in it where Kai Wynn's like reluctantly agreeing that she's going to need Major Kira's help on something like that, and Kira's going in there all guns blazing. I find out that you're no this kind of thing and all that, and she says it seems like we're destined to work together, and she goes, oh, and my child. If you ever speak to me that way again, you know, you will regret the day you ever met me. I'm paraphrasing it, of course. Like, you know, she's very, very calm. You'll never speak to me with such disrespect again. That's what she says to her. Yeah, I remembered it now. And she's like, you know, and you think, fuck, you are a nasty shit. You really are. Yeah.
In the end of it, she gets what she deserves.
Again, a moment of coming good. Is it just self-preservation? You know,
probably
Sisko,
is.
The book. Emissary, the book.
Yeah.
You know, that last little thing before she gets burnt alive by the pirates.
it probably is out of self-preservation.
Yeah.
If you look at even in that last arc, if you look at everything she does, she deserves what she
yeah.
Even though she was manipulated.
Untold evil on the entire planet and kill millions and millions and millions of people, except for those who were true believers, all that crap,
Just the two of them left.
The two left, yeah. Well, what do we do now? Well, release the bar race. There's only two of us that they can possess, so...
Guess it's just time to make some babies.
Oh, no. No, that doesn't bear thinking about. So I think those are the main character arcs. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. So we've covered Bashir, and we'll come back to them in a minute. Bashir, O'Brien, Sisko, Worf, Ezri. I mean, Worf gets another tweak. He goes off to become Federation ambassador to Kronos at the very last episode.
Briefly becomes chancellor.
And then he gives it to Martok.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is a testament to Worf's character, that he didn't really want to be the. Mind you, let's face it, who want a political lead nowadays, But even back then, it's with all that corruption and dishonesty and self-serving. I suppose it was as true then as it ever was now, as it is now, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, so I think let's talk about some of the key moments. Any key moments, anything that you like. I've got a couple that I can think of straight off the top of my head.
Well, the entire episode of Extreme Measures. I love that episode.
It's cheaply made as well, bottle show, all set on the station, and save some money there.
It's literally, probably in my top 5 episodes for the whole series.
Right.
It's just... They're great together.
They are, yeah.
They're great together. And it's the whole episode is basically, it's Odo's going to die in this episode if we do not fix this.
Yeah.
He's literally I don't know how close to death, but very close at the end. And
so they sacrifice potentially their lives.
They're
to potentially.
They're offering.
They could die inside Sloane's brain, couldn't they?
Yeah. I mean, they think they're going to.
Yeah.
But they don't even think about it. They just jump in.
Just do it.
Oh God, are they gonna die? There's not long left. There's a few episodes left, so they could die.
Yeah.
And you're like, are they gonna kill Odo? They could.
Yeah.
And it's tense, and it's I don't know. It's one of my favourite episodes. I really like it.
It's a good episode. It's not my favourite. My favourite one of is Change the Face of Evil.
Yeah.
It's I always went on to you about
you
that.
Did.
Recent rewatching of it, I was slightly disappointed. It wasn't quite as good as I remembered it being, but I still stand by the idea that you have quadruple whammy in this episode. You have Dukat and Kai Wynn.
Yeah.
I mean, they're building up to absolute evil, aren't they? At that point, that episode is a culmination, pretty much. You have the Breen attack Earth. And granted, you only see it on monitors. It doesn't have to see for real, but that comfortably, palpably sets the stage for how powerful the Breen is, that they could actually do it. I know it's like a hit and run attack on Earth, but they do it. Then you have the finale at the end, like Damar's, resist today, resist tomorrow, resist until every Dominion soldier is driven off Cardassian. Well, God, it makes your back, your hairs on your back go up, it's neck. But the biggie is the Defiant.
Yeah.
It's the ship that's been there since the beginning of season 3. Granted, it's not the main vehicle for the show's stories. The station is. That's where the stories are set. But tough little ship, as Worf said in Deep Space in First Contact.
Yeah.
And it takes a pummeling, and it gets destroyed. And you think, shit. Well, if that could happen, then all bets are off. What else can happen? It's a really, really good episode. Really good.
It is. However, you had hyped it up so much. I thought it would be better than it actually was.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be by far the best episode in the whole series.
It isn't. No,
based on how you are, oh God, I can't wait for you to see it. Kind of, I was like, I watched it. I was like, oh okay, that's it.
I just love that moment. I love the thing where it's they go in there really confident, firing their faces at torpedoes. It's all right. Well, we're going in. It's all going well. All this thing, and the Breen are firing it. Shit. There's all electricity everywhere and the power's going down. They're fucking, what's going on here? Nothing's working. And then they just start firing conventional weapons at them as well and just battering the ship. And it's literally a minute, if that. And Sisko says, we've done what we can do here. Abandon ship. That's it. Gone. And you see the little escape pods going off. And then that line where Wei-Un says... all those people, all those escape pods, so vulnerable and that. I'll order their destruction immediately. And the female change thing says, no, they're full of frightened people, or go back and just, that's what she does it for. I mean, obviously, could kill off your entire cast in that episode, and that would have been the end of the show,
There'd be two people.
Yeah. Well, we're on the subject of that. What did you think of the idea of bringing in another race? And
I mean, it works well, but they're not really. They're there to piss Damar off, to threaten the Federation and look a bit creepy, and they're just a plot device, basically.
Another thing, and it's a testament to this show that so late in the game they could introduce a character you've never ever seen before, and instantly memorable, is Kai Wynn's assistant, Solbor. You know, the creepy little monk bloke who's like, yes, Eminence, I will bring you your tea immediately. Right? And he's this really slimy, up his arse, got his head up his own arse kind of character, isn't he? And then he buys it, he dies. I mean, I don't know what you thought about the character, but I just thought it was really good. Like,
it was, yeah.
And the lines where Ducat says to what a tiresome little man, you know? Like, what did you think about that?
I think he was very important to that bit, because if he weren't there, they'd just be left to do their own thing. She'd have never found out who he was, and there'd been no confrontation. They'd just quietly been waiting to read the book. Yeah.
And we did learn that they needed to stop that story for a few episodes, didn't they? Because they'd kind of run out of story. So chucking Ducat out, on the streets blind was just a plot device just to get rid of that story till the last episode, wasn't it? So, yeah.
It's such a strange character, though. I never, like Ducat, I just never thought it would go anywhere near the direction it did.
It's a very unusual place to take that character at that end, isn't it? Yeah.
Just from where he is at the start to the end is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, he's not interested anymore now in... I mean, you could argue maybe that it's still about one-upsmanship, that he still wants the upper hand. He wants to become the Par Wraith's emissary, so it makes him better than Sisko.
I suppose,
it's like a tit-for-tat thing it almost become, hasn't it?
I suppose, yeah.
The galactic stakes of all... Well, he sold the Cardassia to the Dominion.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't enough. Then he wants to bring about the restoration and bring all the evil across the universe and all that. Another thing worth mentioning as well, and which I'll be interested in your thoughts on this one, the demise of Sisko at the end. You know, how that happens. I mean, he took Ducat with him and beat that ultimate evil of Ducat, you know, what he was going to do.
It was a bit abrupt, kind of. They're in the middle of doing these weird ritual thing. Sisko just runs in and rugby tackles him off.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it seems to be that, because like we said, Kai Wynn says it's the emissary of the book, so the book traps the Par Wraiths back in the fire caves, presumably never to be released again. Yeah. And Ducat's stuck with them in that realm. Yeah. A bit of a evil, twisted, maybe it isn't enough to just kill the character. He's not just dead, he's trapped forever in eternity with the Par Wraiths. Do you think that is a good place where they left Sisko being a prophet?
Yeah, right. I think so. I think it is, because the whole show is about his link to the prophets. And then you find out his mother's a prophet. Yeah. And then from then on, it's like they speak to him more and more often. And I wouldn't have guessed that that's what would have happened, but it does make sense that it would have happened.
It's kind of signposted right from the beginning of the series, isn't it? Right from Emissary, the first episode. Yeah. The other thing given that that's something that's signposted, so whether that's I flip here and there on how I feel about the ending, but I think it's generally a pretty good place to leave the character. Yeah. I certainly don't want the character to be out there in the real world so they can ruin him in new Star Trek. So I'm happy with the character being left kind of in that realm. They still can do it. They can do it, or they can take the child of Benjamin Sisko.
Imagine
the new Star Trek series.
Imagine
Sisko's
if in season 5 of Discovery, Michael Burnham becomes the emissary and is spoken to by Benjamin Sisko.
Well, she's been everything else, so she may as well be the emissary as well.
Sisko could talk to her and guide her through on her journey to stop the new AI/anomaly.
She's been the saviour of all mankind, Space Queen, Space Jesus, so she's been Iron Woman, Iron Man Woman, whatever you call it, no gender, no pronouns. So, I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them doing it. Another thing, because go back to the original point I was making. Another thing that's very good, which I always loved about the series, and I know that the actors liked it, and I know the writers liked it as well, is the strong father role. Yeah, I love that about the show. There's nowhere near enough of that in television. How do you feel about where it leaves Jake at the end then?
I feel
And do you think that he should have also spoken to Jake?
I think he should have spoke to both of them.
Jake and Cassidy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, because when I very first watched it, I said to you, I was like, why didn't he talk to his son as well? The ending is good with him looking off.
Which might have robbed that scene then.
It would have.
The writers did say, didn't they, that they wanted the image of Jake looking for his dad, basically. Looking out, wishing, willing, sort of like that. Maybe they couldn't have done that shot if Jake had been there in that vision.
It just seems weird that he has the power to speak to her and say goodbye.
Yeah.
Why would he not say anything to his son either?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah. I actually think that Jake Sisko was really underserved in the last part of the series.
Yeah.
He's not in it that much.
He's not in it really at all much. He's probably in it like 10 minutes.
He didn't get an awful lot of stories in the series anyway.
Yeah.
I think he is a character that probably could have deserved it. I mean, when he did do some great stories, Visitor from season 4 is, the young version of Jake, Cyril Lofton's character, actor playing the part, he's only in the first part of the episode. It's because Tony Todd that plays him, the original Candyman. He plays him as the older Jake. But that's a fantastic, one of the best Star Trek Deep Space Nine stories, one of the best Star Trek episodes actually. And it's a Jake story. Well, it's a Ben Sisko story, but it's largely a Jake story.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about we're leaving out an obvious character really. Let's talk first of all about, we'll talk about two things. Odo going back to the Changelings, how you feel about that. But let's first of all talk about Quark.
Quark ends exactly where he should be and where he wants to be, really.
Yeah.
Like, it's
At
where
Wormhole Junction, in his bar.
It's where he belongs. It's where he should be. For him to go off and be the Grand Leader or whatever.
Yeah. Grand Nagus.
Grand Nagus. It's not the right place for him to be.
Do you think Rom was the better choice?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, especially given how they changed the Ferengi society at that point.
Yeah.
Be more.
He belongs on the station, owning the bar and doing dodgy dealings and.
Yeah. And interestingly, the line he says, which if I remember rightly is the very last line in the show. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I think it's the very last line in the show. He is the thing that stays the same. Yeah. As things change.
Yeah, he's exactly
still there in the bar.
He's a bit less of a pussy than he was at the start.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, he's basically the same. He's the exact same person, basically.
Yeah. Still prepared to do his dodgy DNA, and I think he does in that. I love that name. Where did they think of these names? Where he goes, he's like running that betting pool for who's going to become the new Kai, and he goes, the smart money's on Vedek Unkte. What the fuck's Unkte? It's like a cross between uncle and monkey. Vedek Unkte. So Odo,
assuming that he wouldn't have died, that is the obvious place for his character.
Because I led you into false insecurity, didn't I, for quite a while, because you thought that he died.
Yeah.
Was going to die in the series, and I let you kind of, not necessarily let you believe it was true, but I didn't confirm or deny it, did I? Because I didn't want to spoil anything.
Someone online said that he died,
right?
And I saw that.
Right, okay.
And you were like, yeah. yeah, he does.
Yeah. I didn't want to spoil things for you. You know what I'm like, I'm terrible for spoilers.
You are, yeah.
I am terrible. I've got I am like completely, I don't care about spoilers. I just, tell me. And I've got no care about telling other people either, so I have to really be careful not to say things to people. So I'm just ruining an entire show for you to watch. Well, there's no point watching that now then. You just told me how it ended. No, I've never ever cared. It's weird. I've always been like that. I was happy to have spoilers of things right from the youngest age. I am the person that reads the last chapter of a book first and then reads the book from the beginning, because I like to know how it got to that point at the end. It adds a whole new layer of mystery to reading for me. It does. How did it get? Why? How is those characters there at the end? Now it's just total blind guesswork when you're reading a book from start to beginning. You can get to the end, fucking shit book. But if it was a shit book, but I had a mystery of how those characters got from there to there, that makes a shit book quite good. So I do that with TV shows as well. You can actually, but I can't. That's why I have to wait until the TV show's finished sometimes. Yeah. Watch the end, start at the beginning again.
I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, no spoilers,
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few people in the world that does that. But,
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Strange like that. But anyway, there you go. Yeah. Thoughts on where Kira is at the end?
She
gets the station.
She gets the station. Which, a lot of the characters kind of like... You can kind of see where they will end up.
Yeah.
From the start.
Maybe it was always where they were going to be in some form.
Like, for her, it seems like that was where... I mean, she basically starts off with the station. Yeah. At the start of the series.
Yeah, when he comes along, she's in charge of it until he steps on board.
Yeah.
And resents the fact the Federation there.
And she gets it in the end.
Yeah. Loves the fact the Federation... Quite happy about the fact the Federation is there in the end. So are there any episodes that we're going to give like high scores for, or abysmally low scores for, or anything that we want to highlight?
Well, none of them are abysmally low scores, because even like the first few, like they're not amazing, but they're average episodes.
Yeah. They're nothing. I mean, they're right higher than any episode of Star Trek Discovery or Picard, and they're like weaker points of the season. I think, really,
Yeah.
But so, I mean, that's still,
I mean, I've already said one, Extreme Measures, which is...
Okay then, so what would you give that out of 10?
I give that a 10.
Really?
It's one of my favourite episodes. Okay. It's a very human episode.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good story.
I don't know.
I'm a sucker for those episodes anyway where people go into people's minds and metaphysical landscapes and all that kind of thing.
See, I like weird, wacky shit like that as well.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of Lynch as well, so yeah, I like that sort of stuff.
I am becoming a fan of Lynch.
Yeah, going into the crazy realms of the metaverse and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, Extreme Measures I'd probably give a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think Changing Face of Evil is probably a 9 out of 10. I would have given it a 10 out of 10 at one point, but recently watching it, I think there's slightly something not, the banter on the bridge before they're going off to battle, about losing the, what is it, they're going to build that Alamo toy thing and all that, the Alamo model. And he plays with toys. Yeah, but things like that, that kind of drag it a little bit. But so it's still a 9 for me. I think, Extreme Measures is a 9. I also think the episode after 10 as well, When It Rains, I think that's a really good story.
Yeah.
When they're going off to Cardassia and meeting with Damar and all that, and the Resistance and all that, it's a great story.
Yeah.
There's nothing particularly bad about this season, but isn't it interesting how we're not scoring the final episode?
It's a weird episode, and we got a bit of insight from reading in that book. It was kind of rushed a bit, the last episode.
Yeah.
Because it's 2 parts in one.
Yeah.
But the story, everything ends in the first half.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure pretty much everything does.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's just like the stuff in the fire caves and
and the rest of it's
tying up all the characters.
It's just goodbyes, isn't it? It's the fire caves and the goodbyes.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that fire cave stuff doesn't really sort of do anything until you get halfway through.
Yeah. It's
like it goes from the end of the Dominion War and all the other bits to do with Kira and Cardassia and even Garak's story gets tied up at that point, doesn't it, as well, and Damar and all the rest of it. There's no Nog there. Rom there, so there's no Ferengi elements to it. Nog's there on the ship, but he's basically just
there.
Just there, yeah. Worf gets next to nothing to do. O'Brien gets next to nothing to do. The only thing really with that is Ezri and Bashir is their love story, but beyond that, a lot of this story is about Kira and Kira and Damar and Garak on Cardassia.
Yeah.
Some meaty moments for Sisko.
Yeah.
For a episode of Deep Space Nine, it doesn't really have a lot of regular character stuff going on in that last episode. Until it comes to all of a sudden saying their goodbyes.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that was... See, I've got this theory that... I know it's not really a theory. I've got this thought that Deep Space Nine maybe should have done... or tied up all of its story arc, right? And then done something like an All Good Things for a finale.
Yeah.
Do some big penultimate episode. Now, maybe budgets at that point in history of television making wouldn't have allowed for that to do something like that. And then your last story be, I'm not talking about like doing the last episode of Game of Thrones where everyone's just walking around, there's no dialogue for 20 minutes or anything like that. But
so boring.
Something that's more standalone, character, with an interesting little story that run through it.
Mm.
You know.
I guess the problem with that would be Sisko wouldn't be in it. So,
but here's an idea, because at one point in time it was floated whether the Sisko would, when he does his thing at the end, he'd wake up and he's Benny Russell, you know, and the whole thing was a dream, and that, you know, the whole story of Deep Space Nine was a dream, and they said it was far too meta, and it would alienate Star Trek fans and all that kind of thing. And I think it would have aired well with time. Over time, I think Star Trek fans would have got used to it and come to accept it. But it would have decanonised. Mind you, that's not such a bad thing, actually. If it decanonised all of Star Trek, then...
Or they could have done it the other way around. Like what you said, end the story and then have another episode after, and it's a Benny Russell story.
Yeah.
And right at the end, Sisko wakes up in bed.
Yeah.
And then...
Or something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Something out of the universe, or... I don't know. I mean, if we sat here brainstorming, we probably could come up with a story for that.
Yeah.
But I think it became a prisoner of the fact that it had to be, that it was a story arc.
Yeah.
And there's benefits to having a story arc series, a lot of benefits, but it also has a lot of disadvantages in that if you're going to do a story arc series and it's become increasingly more story arcs to go on, it's got to deliver.
Yeah.
And also if it's an end of series thing, it's got to deliver wow level as well.
See,
because
I think
few people it's going to live up to the expectations of many people. You're always going to piss people off. But sorry, go on.
I think it ends the story arc well.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't end the series that it ends the series well. Yeah. But it's like in this half we're ending the story arc, in this half we're ending the series.
It feels to me slightly anticlimactic. And, It feels like, well, is that it?
I mean, Sisko, he's just at a party.
Yeah.
And then he just sprints out.
I know. And the problem I have with the last episode is that there's lots of niggly little things that annoy me about it. So it annoys me that... I understand why they did it, but it annoys me that he doesn't say his goodbye to Jake. It annoys me that he's at that party... And they've said it's a 2-hour trip on a what's name to Bajor. Probably say 40 minutes with a runabout.
He's there in like a minute.
What are they doing? Are they fucking wandering around in those caves forever, waiting for Sisko to get there? Oh, Sisko's here now. Let's release the the power rays. You know.
And then Sisko just immediately knows the exact way.
He doesn't know which route they took, because she says, "Wander around these caves forever. You'll get lost in a." You know. But. I know he's visited the fire caves before because it's mentioned in several episodes way back in the series. There's one episode, and I think it was Muse again. I think it was the Jake Sisko first, where he says, "You coming with me to visit the fire caves?" And he goes, "No, I'm going to write my book instead. I'm going to stay and write my book." And he goes, "Okay, you're lost. I'll go and visit the fire caves." So he's been there, but would he know exactly where they have walked? Would he
maybe
know
like a big prophet hand points out?
This is the way to the power rays. Down here, big booming voice. Do not go to the power race.
Take a second right. Straight ahead for 100 meters. Go take the first exit at the roundabout.
It's a par nav. Anyway, I'll amuse myself with that one. Anyway, yeah. So he's suddenly, instantly, he's like, he does his Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. It's things like, as well, like there's a scene where Wei-Un's looking down. I think I told you about this. Wei-Un's looking down at the female changeling when she's dying and she's all flaky and that, and he goes, "I would die for you," and all this kind of thing. And she goes, "Wei-Un, the only solid I've ever trusted." And he's looking down at her, and one of his contact lenses is wonky. So the one eye's looking down at her, the other one's looking up at the ceiling. It's like he's got a glass eye going. Yeah, and I know it was a fuck up. A thing with the makeup and all that, you know. I don't know. It's the little things like that. It's the little things like that. It's like when they're going through the battle, they reuse footage from so many episodes of Star Trek that have got Cardassian ships and Romulan ships and Federation ships, just to save a bit of money. They even use clips of like Klingons jumping across from Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, being blown across the bridge by an explosion. They used it in Sacrifice of Angels. They reused the same clip of the Klingon being blown across again in the final episode. You know, they redid special effects shots like shots from Voyager, from the pilot episode with the Cardassian ship getting hit by one of the streamers out of the Badlands, you know, the
Yeah.
plasma. Everything they could find with special effects in it, with ships blowing, you know. I know they were trying. I appreciate the fact that they were trying to save money, but this is your final episode. Star Trek fans will recognise these things. You know what we wanted to see when they get to Cardassia was. I know there was one very shitty CGI shot of all the ships. It got so much grain on it, you know, so much like sorry, not grain. The pixelation of the old that you see CGI from that era now on things.
The bigger TV you have, the worse it
It's
is.
worse, yeah. It does get worse when you got like 4K or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's terrible. It's so sort of digitized and pixelated, and yeah. I suppose again, it's what they had at that time.
Yeah.
That's it.
I don't blame it for being
so
old.
it's not going to make it a bad episode for those things. You can't say it's on the ship just because it's old. That's not true. Twilight Zone's an old series. You know, it's a brilliant series. You know, so I don't know, but it's just all these weird niggly things, and it niggled me that Odo didn't say goodbye to Quark. But now I know why he didn't. It's in keeping with their relationship. There's loads of these little things that niggled me. It niggled me that I'd invested so much in that relationship, that unrequited love with Odo and Kira. And then as soon as CIA honeypot trap female changeling shakes his hand at the end, he'll go anywhere for her. You know.
Yeah.
Fuck Kira.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, you'll go home and take over and look after our people. Yeah. You know. And people have said it's in keeping with the character because that big, deep, dark secret that he kept when he was being tortured by Garak. And he goes, home, I want to go home. And he goes, we'll go back to the station. He goes, no, to my people, the Great Link, I want to, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe that, you know, but then that lessens how he feels about Kira. And he says in the episode, you know, I'll never forget you and I love you and but I'm still leaving you, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue, well, is he going to let all the changelings die? Why doesn't he just cure them
And then go back.
And then periodically just go and visit the changelings like you do with a family member that you don't want to live with, but you don't mind visiting them every now and again. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah.
But no, I don't know. So those are the things that niggle me. Like the instantly the war ends. You know,
I did like the episode.
Yeah,
like it's a good episode, but it does have problems.
It has
not
problems.
perfect.
Yeah, it bugs me that Garak and Bashir have nothing until the final episode. That last chunk of story arc. I'm quite happy about the Bashir O'Brien thing, but Bashir and Garak have got a friendship as well.
Yeah,
different, not like O'Brien and Bashir, and they just get like, is it 30 seconds or something? We live in interesting times. Maybe you'll see each other again. You know, okay. That's it. But I do like that moment at the end where Jake's looking out the window. As much as it annoys me that he didn't say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
And he's looking out. Kira puts the arm, that kind of thing. Jake just looking out. And he goes, lovely. All the stories have been told. There's other stories to tell, but that's life.
Yeah.
You know, there's things that happen in the future. It's a great show. Fantastic characters, some of the best Star Trek characters, you know, in any series of Star Trek. Really thought-provoking. It's got all its political stuff. It's got all its religious allegory. It goes into some weird esoteric places as well sometimes, which I like that. I'm a sucker for all that kind of stuff. Obviously, it resolves it. Although we might not necessarily be happy with how it resolves it, but it does tell its story. It gets to its end. It's got a conclusion. It's not lost. It's not Game of Thrones, you know, or anything like that. It's got an ending that people are happy with, you know, and it's a credit to the Star Trek franchise. So, is there anything else you wanted to say about it? Maybe we talk a little bit about here the timing of it when it ended, but because I find it an interesting point in time. You got season 6 and 7 of Voyager left, and arguably they were phoning it in. Yeah. Even though season 7 of Voyager has got some of the best episodes of Star Trek in it. It's got some fantastic stories in season 7 of Voyager. The Workforce 2-parter, The Void, you know, some really good episodes in season 7. But I think around those episodes, there's a lot of phoning it in. It felt like Star Trek was tired. So I felt like Deep Space Nine was the end of an era. Then you had Enterprise, which they were trying to do something new, but it was a prequel series. It's not a bad series, but I don't think it's really got any classics as such.
Well, when everyone started to like it, it ended. So
yeah. It did start to really get good. probably the best episodes of the last, right towards the end of season 4, the In a Mirror Darkly, they're two of the best episodes of Enterprise. And it's weird how they just came along right as it probably already been cancelled at that point as of airing it, so I don't know. Shit finale, but that kind of sums up, and then Star Trek disappears into the wilderness, and then it gets thrown to the wolves of the JJ Brigade, so there's an argument that you could make that you look quite sorrowfully. I'm not trying to sound all poetic and all this kind of thing, but wistfully and sadly at Star Trek Deep Space Nine's end as the last great moment in Star Trek. I do remember we have got a reviewing on it because we did the Berman pilots where we did Deep Space Nine's pilot, Voyager's pilot and Enterprise's pilot, and the one thing you said is it feels different. Doesn't feel like Star Trek-y as it's what I think you said something to the effect of, but you can tell it's Star Trek, but it feels like something different. You've seen the J.J. Abrams films,
even though I don't actually mind the films that much.
Well, I have difference of opinion on
no
that.
You despise them. I don't think they're that bad. I think they're entertaining.
2009 is all right.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say I hate it. It's all right.
Yeah,
it's watchable. Picard bait and switched us with the first episode, made us think that something really good was coming along, and then shat all over it. I think generally. So this goes back to my old argument of could we, even with what you've seen Discovery, you've seen Picard, and you've seen Star Change New Worlds now as well.
I've seen nearly everything new, but barely anything old.
So that comparison, all right. Forget the fact that you haven't really seen a lot of Enterprise. Really, that's your big missing gap there. But you've seen a few episodes, right? There wasn't much more of Voyager after Deep Space Nine. There's 2 more seasons. A lot of them were meh episodes, but there's some great episodes in there. But more meh than good. Yeah, right. I think anyway. There are a lot of people might argue differently with that. But so could you then? What would you think of that statement that I've made, that it was the end of an era?
I'd say that's
an end
correct.
of that type of Star Trek.
Yeah, I'd say because Star Trek's weird. It's old even when it was new.
Yeah. If
you get what I mean,
the phrase I use is out of time rather than being old.
Yeah,
it's got a different perspective on the world than the average television show. Yeah, that's by design.
But even the way it was made, kind of like the sets and stuff, they looked older. Yeah. Than other stuff did at that time.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Actually, that's
And then Enterprise came out, and then suddenly they modernised Star Trek completely. Yeah. And I think that was the change. Yeah. I think they just immediately tried to modernise it and make it like shows that come out now, not like that, and that's why it's an end of an era. I think it loses its originality a bit.
It makes me sad to look back and watch Deep Space Nine at its end. Can you understand that?
No, yeah, I understand where you...
I love it as a series, I love it ends, but it makes me sad. It does make me sad. I miss that old Star Trek. It was clever, it was thoughtful, it was unique, and very little like it on television. But also, one of the wonderful things that is actually unique about, not so much the old Star Trek, because sometimes I find that in the right certain context, the old Star Trek was really quite scary, especially if you were young. It wasn't the same type of show as Next Generation in Deep Space Nine. It had some really horrible moments. I mean, people were dispatched in the old Star Trek with complete abandon. Sometimes they were the red shirts, they died in horrible ways. Sometimes, and that's not to say Next Generation and Deep Space Nine didn't have some horrible things in it from time to time. But you know what? And I'll include Voyager in this actually as well. The unique thing is that what I call the televisual comfort blanket. It's one of the few shows that when I'm having a shit day and I want to de-stress, it's like getting into a hot bath. It's just stick it on and you just forget everything, It's just chill out telly. It's just comfort blanket television. Yeah, I miss that. I really, really miss that on television. I do.
Well, there's plenty of Star Trek.
There's not the Star Trek I want now. I've got to keep watching all the old stuff, you know.
But there's plenty of it.
No, but that's just true. Yeah.
It's like 500 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, this is very true. Yeah. There's plenty to watch there. Yeah. So hopefully, and as long as I've got my physical media, I'll be all right. You know, I've got my DS9 there. I've got my original Star Trek there. My Next Generations are somewhere. You know, I've got my Enterprise as well. My Voyagers. You know. Yeah. Okay
got
then.
Your Picard's up there.
Don't tell people I've got it. Don't tell people I've got it. It was for study purposes. It was for research purposes. Actually, funnily enough, I did pull some gems. I've never actually got around to making videos about them, but when I listened to the commentaries, I pulled some right gems off there. Especially the one in Deep Space Nine season 2 finale where Alex Kurtzman said, I would love to be a captain on that bridge, and I think it was Heather Kane turned around and says, "Well, you can't because you're a man." and I thought, well, that just sums up Star Trek today, doesn't it? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for persevering with Deep Space Nine. We got to the end. Yeah.
Well, I did it.
Yeah. Hopefully you will go back and there's some that you haven't seen yet. It'd be great if you could watch them. So yeah, maybe a video for another time.
Maybe one day. We've done some others, so
yeah, definitely.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right then, mate. So we hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining us, and please help that wonderful little algorithm and by sharing, subscribing if you can. Truly appreciate it. It really means a lot to us. And Dan and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye bye for now.
Bye.